Welcome to Attributions. In today's episode, we speak with Finn Shrestha about climate change's impacts on the Himalayan and Hindu Kush mountain ranges, ice pack, and glaciers. We talked about what kind of effects are being felt in the mountains, how the glaciers are responding to warming, weather pattern changes, and water security for billions of people across Asia that rely on Himalayan and Hindu Kush glaciers and snowpack that feed some of Asia's largest river systems. Finu is a remote sensing and Geo-information analyst at the International Centre for Integrated Mountain Development and has been working on issues affecting the region for over a decade, including glaciers, glacier lakes, and glacial lake outburst floods, also known as GLOFs. It was great speaking to Finu, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. So we are here with Finn Shrestha. Finu, thank you so much for coming on Attributions.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So before we get started about talking all things Himalayas, Hindu Kush mountain ranges, glaciers, and water security, I'm wondering if you can give us a brief background on who you are and where you're working right now, and of course whatever you're focusing on.
My name is Finn Shrestha. I work as remote sensing and Geo-information analyst at ICIMOD. So ICIMOD is an intergovernmental organization that works for mountain and people. Among various thematic areas, one thematic area is climate and environment risks, where I am focused on it, and I basically work or research on the cryosphere research and its associated risks.
How long have you been looking into the cryosphere for? Has this been many decades?
So I have been working. It's almost over 13 years. I've been working on cryosphere, especially focusing on glacial lakes, and recently I have been also engaged on glacier-related hazards such as GLOF, which is also known as glacial lake outburst flood.
Very, very important topics. So I think before we get talking about the details, I think it might be useful to give listeners an idea about the size and the scale of the Himalayan and Hindu Kush mountain ranges. So I just wanted to ask you, how many countries do these mountains span across?
So our organization usually focus on 8 different countries that extends from Afghanistan to Myanmar, and which starts from Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, China, Bhutan, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. Though the Bangladesh doesn't have this cryosphere phenomenon, but still we look on the other aspects in the country. So if we see the cryospheres, the range starts from Afghanistan to the Myanmar, and the study shows that there are 54,000 glaciers numbers that covers an area of nearly 60,000 glacier mass and nearly 6,000 ice volume. So this is the status that we did based on our study, and due to the climate change, these numbers might have gone a little bit down because as you can know everyone that the glaciers are melting very rapidly. So the mass volumes might be changed based on what I have just shared, that it might be a little bit more melting of the glaciers and the volume might have changed. But if we see that the scenario, the changing of the glaciers in the eastern Himalaya is even more rapid than in the Karakoram regions. So there might be a little bit disparity between the regions to the regions. And
of course, just staying on the topic of ice, is it true to say that the region as a whole is almost like the Earth's third pole?
Yeah, right. Because the frozen water that has been in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region is a very vast, and besides this North Pole and the South Pole, so it is also called as the third pole. So the mass that we can see is comparatively is more or less similar to this third pole and the North Pole, but the phenomena of retreating are a little bit different. However, I'm also saying that both the poles, all the North Pole, South Pole, and the South Poles are melting very fast, but the change rates might be a little bit different than the other two poles in the third pole.
And just out of curiosity, what countries have you worked in looking at these mountain landscapes? Have you worked in multiple countries, or just focusing on one?
No, we have to work for the all countries, specifically focusing on this mountains, numbers, areas, and the volume. So from Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Myanmar, everything we have worked. But while working with it, because the China IMHE gas, they have been partnering with us since the very long beginning. So they have been looking into the Tibetan Plateau glaciers. So in the collaboration with them, we have been working together since ages. So basically, every country we have to focus.
Now, you mentioned just before about glaciers retreating, extensively and quite quickly. So I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the impacts that climate change is having on the region. I think for many, many people, it's sometimes difficult to imagine such high mountains being affected by a warming planet. Sometimes people think that they're too high or they're too far away. And I know that even from when I have worked in the area and from my own personal experience, that the Himalayas and of course the Hindu Kush as well are certainly not immune to the effects of climate change. And in fact, the area is quite fragile when you research and look under the surface. So I guess from your perspective, how far-reaching are the impacts of climate change on the region, and in particular the ice pack and the glaciers?
Yes, Ashley, the impact of climate change on glacier has tremendous, because if we see the last decade study, the glacier has reduced by 65% faster than as compared to the previous decades. And the study also indicated that the HKH glacier could lose the glacier mass by 80% of the volume by the end of the century. So another study that we recently did based on that study, it has been said that if we keep the world temperatures to 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade, glaciers in SKS will be lost by 30 to 50% of their volume by the end of the century. But if the same temperature, if we expand to 3 degrees Celsius, then the HKS glacier will lose its mass by 55 to 75%. And again, if the temperature rise by 4 degrees centigrade, the HKS glacier mass will lost its mass by 70 to 80%. So these are all the best study based on this different temperature or climate scenarios. But if we look at in the real scenario, like with our own eyes, if you see the mountains, we can clearly see that glaciers are retreating. And especially the clean ice, which used to be like clearly visible from the naked eyes from the distance, here it has almost vanished. So this condition is not only in Nepal, Bhutan, we can also see in other part of the regions. Like last September, we went to Bhutan for a field study, and it was so unbelievable that there is almost no glaciers on the mountain peaks, which used to be, and there is a clear indications of like there used to be the glaciers in the previous decades, which because of the climate change has retreated all, and only what we can see is only the bare mountains with the rocks, boulders, and these moraines. So that clearly indicate that climate temperature is rising, and it has a huge impacts on this melting of the glaciers. So saying this, the study also said that because of climate change, these glaciers has been more retreating in the eastern part of the Himalaya. It might be because of a number of the clean ice glaciers than in the Karakoram. Because if we compare the topography in the eastern Himalaya, most of the glaciers are in the form of clean ice cap, whereas in the Karakoram it has a very large glaciers with debris covered glacier. So if we compare the solar radiations, the radiations that receives from the clean ice on the clean ice glacier, and it's not only clean ice because of this all the pollutants. The clean ice glacier has the deposition of the black carbon, and because of that black carbon, they absorb more solar radiation, which helps them to melt more quicker than the glaciers on the Karakoram, which is debris cover. Because the solar radiation in the debris covers, debris on the glaciers helps helps the underground ice to melt less lately than the clean ice glacier. So
by clean ice you mean ice without a covering of, say, like dirt and rocks, right? Yeah, because I'm just trying to think about the different types of glaciers, and I know that even as you mentioned, the clean ice glaciers with no protection of dirt and ice, they might look very white, but the soot from all of the burning, of biomass from the cooking fires, and also, factory pollution, and of course cars and diesel trucks and things like that are all having huge impacts on the glaciers, which, as you mentioned, reduces the ability of the ice to reflect heat back into into space.
Right. Instead of
so it's absorbing heat.
Yes, right. That's
so
correct.
I remember actually the last time I was in Nepal was in 2018, and I still remember but even the glaciers covered in debris are experiencing a bit of warming too. I remember I went to one glacier for 3 years in a row just to watch it, and there was pools of water forming on the top into little smaller lakes on top of the glacier, and this was at an altitude of over 5,500 meters, so the warming is clearly having an impact even at very high altitudes.
And recently we are also doing this study on the permafrost, because we can clearly see the impact of climate change on the glaciers because it's on the top. But whatever the frozen ice that's under the glaciers or under the ground is invisible. So as you already mentioned that, these small ponds or lakes are increasing on the debris covered glacier because of the melting of this permafrost. So this is one of the pertinent research that we have to do in the futures. And we are currently doing this, like installing the sensors in few of the places in Nepal, and we are extending this work to Bhutan also, because this kind of knowledge we have a very limited. There is a knowledge gaps because we don't know what's going on under the ground. So this is also one of the important area to be researched on, and this kind of things we have also planning to do in Pakistan also, so that we have a clear pictures of ice meltings under the ground. But if we compare like clean ice and debris covers, obviously clean ice we can directly visible with the naked eyes in each area, and on the debris ice we don't know, and we can easily visible that ice. Yes, underground ice is melting in the witnesses of the small lakes that have been forming on the debris.
And what about the other impacts of climate change in the region? I mean, we've just been talking about a lot of about glaciers melting, but what about, say, for example, like snowfall rates? Are they reducing across the region during the winter? I mean, I recently read a headline, I think it was in the Hindustan Times, about how some parts of the Himalayas just had a snowless winter, for example.
Yes, Ashley, this year I have noticed a lot of snow or no snow on the mountain peaks, and we can also hear from a lot of news about this media from this Kashmir and from some part of Gilgit-Baltistan that there are no snowfall at all, and there is a degradation of this ski tourists, so no ski and no business at all in their respective area. And in here and Bhutan, Nepal also, we haven't experienced any snowfall this year. So this might be one of the indicators of climate change, because if we compare with the previous decade, there used to be snow and people are benefiting from them. The community just residing downstream of the mountains, they are getting water, and also it's helping their agricultures, and also also in their household chores. So this years I have been felt that the snow cover or the snow durations are uh, has retarded, and not only the snowfalls, the temperature rise we have also been felt because it's the winter time here and we didn't have to wear this down jackets. We can survive in a very small thin jackets. Even the nights are not colder than previous years. So we can really feel that yes, temperature is rising and it's impacting on the snowfall, glaciers, and everywhere.
And of course, one way glaciers grow in size is, of course, successive winters with snow building on each winter. And of course, if there's a reduction in snow, then the glaciers can't grow, and then of course you have the warming impact, which is speeding up the glaciers. So it's not a very good situation for the glaciers right now, I think.
Yes, snow are the health of, I could say the health of the glaciers, because if the snow are there, then the area and the mass can expand. Otherwise, the glaciers that we have been seeing would be depleted at any time.
And from your research, Finu, have these changes been quite sudden, or have they increased over a longer period of time? And I guess an important question is, are the impacts over I think maybe 5 years or maybe a decade, have they become quicker?
So after this industrial level, this because of the rise of temperatures, this has been it has put a large impacts on the glaciers, and we usually do the remote sensing analysis. So based on the remote sensing analysis, we have seen that in a 5-year period, we can see a little bit changes in the degree of or in the retreat of the glaciers. So if we see the every year analysis, we see a very little, I don't know how much, but per centimeter, per centimeter, we can see the retreat in the glacier. But if we go beyond 5 years, then we can clearly say that, okay, glacier has really melted. So I think it's a gradual process, not the immediate one. And I believe that the temperature won't increase from 1 to the 2 degree in a year. So it might be also takes time, depending on all the carbon emissions that the developed countries has been emitting. So it is a gradual process. But if the emissions would continue more than that we have expected, then of course the melting of the glacier would be quick in the future also.
And I think you mentioned earlier about when we were talking about snow and some communities that get their water resources for their agriculture and of course drinking. Now I'm just wanting to, I think talking about water right now it's a good place to start talking about water. And of course, all of these glaciers and all of this snow, it eventually melts at some point and it contributes to many rivers across Asia. And I'm just wondering if you can give us an example about how many people rely on the Himalayas and the Hindu Kush as a water source. Do you have a rough number in mind? Doesn't have to be exact.
So the study shows that 240 million people that resides in the mountainous areas, they are directly benefiting this water resources. And if we go downstreams, nearly 2 billion people depends on the water resources from the glaciers.
Yeah, it's a really big number. And I think, have you worked in any communities that are facing water resources? Have you talked to the people that are having problems with their water because of the changing weather patterns, for example?
Yes, I have been to the field in Langtang in Nepal. So when I talk with them, that yes, they are facing the water scarcity recently than the previous. And they have even said that, melting of the glaciers, they have also experienced a lot, and the snowfall timing and the durations, they have seen the very declining in that. And instead of the snowfall, they are facing more intense rainfall. So which is very harmful if we consider these risks such as landslides and also sometimes the flood. So there is very minimum snowfalls in the very high altitude at 4,000 meters. Only they can see very minimal snow cover at the high mountain peak above 5,000. So they have been saying that they have already faced the difficulty of water shortage, which hampers in their agricultures and also the health also, and also the insecure in terms of the disasters like landslides and floods.
And you mentioned landslides as well. I think that one thing that is becoming more of a concern is when you have the glacier, the lakes, the massive flood outbreaks from these glaciers that can be triggered by a landslide or triggered by too much rain or maybe a big piece of debris falls into the water and explodes the barrier. I guess what I'm wanting to, and I know you mentioned that your research is looking into these massive glacier floods. Have these disastrous situations, have they increased, or are they increasing right now, and how devastating can they be?
So if we consider this GLOF, then yes, it's happening in the regions. But when we do the study, it's like we didn't see the very rapid frequency of the GLOFs happening. But what we found that because of the GLOF, the intensity of the impacts in the downstream has risen because of this all the infrastructures along the river valley, and also the development of these settlements and hydropower generations, everything that comes near to the river valley. So that the destructions and the damages that cause to the livestock and the properties of the community have increased. So when looking at the GLOF perspectives, because of this melting of glaciers, the calving of the glaciers are one of the triggering factors that causes the GLOF, and also the snow and ice avalanche. Because of their melting, they usually falls on the lake that causes the displacement wave and just erodes the moraines, which causes the GLOF happening. So one example of such case is the recent South Lonak Lake. Because of the this falling of the lateral moraine, GLOF occurs, which impacts the downstream community and also damage hydropower, other infrastructures, and many more loss of the lives and the property happening. But saying this, that we can't also predict that where and when GLOF will happen, because this needs of further studies like their slopes, right, and the melting of the glaciers and the permafrost that's remains under the moraine of the lake. So that's everything we need to further research into it. But I can say that the GLOFs are impacting more of the community more tremendously than the before.
And now, speaking about downstream communities as well, now, if we go back to water for a minute, and would it be safe to say that, for example, because of all this melting, because you have all this snow and ice melting, that at least in some areas, for the short term, there would be a surplus of water for many communities. But I think the longer term impact is more important here. Now I'm thinking about countries like Pakistan relying on the Indus River, or communities in Nepal relying on many tributaries that flow into bigger systems like the Ganges River in India, and of course others like the Mekong and the Brahmaputra river systems. Now, is there anything to suggest that these rivers, these major rivers, will have big problems in the future when simply there's not enough water to recharge them from the glaciers? If we go down a path of, say, 3 degrees warming, and as you mentioned, I think you said something around like 70% of the glaciers would be gone in that scenario, how badly would these impact those major rivers in Asia?
So if we see the short-term impacts on the water security in Asia, that could be the immediate threat to the water shortage, public health, food security, and economic instable due to these disasters like drought, flood, and inadequate structures. But if we see, because we have to see the long-term perspective, the long-term perspectives could be the more severe consequences, such as the decreased agriculture productivity and increase in the risks of conflict over water resources, which I think is happening in few of the transboundary nations also, and irreversible damage to the ecosystem, socio-economic disparity, which leads to the potential leading of the mass displacements and migration also. I think main issue we have to look at the long-term impacts of water resources, and which we can see without the good governance, water governance, and promoting like sustainable water management practices, investing in infrastructures, we can't deal with this long-term impact water security.
Yeah, it's a serious issue, and I don't think it gets too much attention in the world's media. For example, with the glaciers, I think that it's a very underreported issue, unfortunately. And I guess if we talk, you mentioned things like water governance and also all these other things that can help. And I'm just wondering, what kind of solutions do you see in regards to any of the problems that we've talked about throughout this conversation? I think it's safe to say that the world needs to stop burning fossil fuels, obviously, number one, to prevent warming. But I'm just wondering, from your research, have you found any short-term, more immediate kind of solutions to reduce the impacts of climate change on glaciers, for example? Is there anything that can be done and that you can see kind of an immediate effect?
Yes, if we talk about the short or immediate solutions, I think all the big nations who have been emitting a lot of this carbon and methane emissions, they should commit what they have said and stick to 1.5 degrees centigrade. If we stick to 1.5 degrees centigrade, I believe that the changes that we have been seeing right now will be maintained, and this melting of glaciers won't be happened too quickly that we have been observing.
And what are you hoping to see in the coming years? Do you hope that your research will show? What do you hope your research will show or raise awareness on? What do you hope that? What's your hope for the future?
So my research would show that, like, how much glacier have been retreating, of course, that would be, and also saying this, my research would I would like to advocate that to the big nations and all the politicians and government and other relevant agencies, that you have to act now to preserve the snow and the glaciers. If we continue to emit this carbon emissions like this, the glacier will be no left at all. That will have a high implications on the water security to the downstream communities, and also related with the waterborne diseases, and also the economy disparities, and also the many environmental disbalance in the world.
Well, Finu, thank you so much for your time. And I think before we sign off, is there any website or any research where you would like to point listeners to, where they can follow your work or your organization's work?
So I can be followed in LinkedIn. So that will be the F Shrestha, F-S-S-R-E-S-T-H-A. And for any further query, you can email me at finu.shrestha@isimo.org. And for further work and all the work that we have been doing, you can follow all the updates from isimo.org website.
Thank you so much, Finu, and I really appreciate ICMOD's work. It's very important stuff, and I hope it gets more press over these really, really important issues. Thank you so much for coming on to talk. If you found this episode of Attributions valuable, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel, follow us on social media, share it with your friends and with your network, and visit our website at www.climateimpactstracker.com for articles and more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you again on the next episode of Attributions.